Well, hello and happy Marvel Monday, everybody. We are back and we are taking it old school, like back when you were in grade school. It is summer vacation. So we are going Marvel Monday summer camp style with a midday stream for you guys. It is me, Keels. It is him, Teets. Just like we do every Monday, we are here to talk Marvel with you guys. And we are continuing again our chronological rewatch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This week's feature film is Avengers Age of Ultron, and I've got a lot of hot takes on this one, and I'm so excited for this discussion because this is the most important movie out of all of them, bar none. I know if you watched them out of order, like when they came out in the theaters, it may not have made a lot of sense. It may have seemed really boring, and the villain was kind of like, meh, and it was just a lot of characters. But what if we come to understand over these past 12 or 13, 14 weeks, this is the 15th movie, it all comes together at this point, and this is the 15th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It is the last movie of the second phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before we get to that, I have a little something fun to share. So yesterday was America's Ass's birthday. So yes, that is Chris Evans, for all of you guys who didn't know. And Thor, Chris Hemsworth, sent him some birthday wishes from the set of the latest Thor movie. And I thought this was really cute, what he sent to him on Instagram. And it's a picture of him with Chris Pratt. And it says, "Happy 40th birthday, Chris Evans. You'll always be number one in my book." And the Battle of the Chris's wages on for yet another year. So happy birthday to Chris Evans yesterday. As Teet said, 40, like he just can't believe it's physically possible for someone to be that old. Well, let me tell you, Teets, it is possible, and it stinks. So thanks for rubbing that in. Anyway, how you been, Teets? I haven't seen you since Wednesday.
Yeah, I've been good. I mean, not like we don't chat outside that, but just finally cooling down a little bit.
Teets wants people to know that he talks to people outside of the stream. So this is not the only one-on-one interpersonal communication he has with individuals during the course of the week. Congratulations, Teets. You have friends, and I'm very proud of you.
Oh, boy. Well, yeah, so it's finally cooling down here a little bit. But, I mean, that's relative for you people in the South.
Do you want to see what it feels like here right now? It's going to be 3 digits. It's just, is it closer to 10 or is it closer to 0? Ooh, only feels like 95 right now. They did send out text messages that it was going to get up to 110 at some point today. And it's not a dry heat. It is a very, very wet, humid heat. So you're going to feel like you just got out of the swimming pool. And that's fine. So we are doing an early stream today. It's a little bit different. I guess the Brewers are out like on a Monday night baseball or something like that. So Teets has to go sling some nuts at Miller Park or whatever it's called now. So we decided to mix it up and do a little midday stream for you guys because this is the most important movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For the first time in what seems like weeks, we don't really have any outside Marvel news to talk about other than we got the first episode of Loki last week. And as you guys know, I will not watch a single second of it until the season is done with. But Teets has watched the first episode. And what did you think?
It's different. It's hard to describe without getting spoilery. I definitely feel more... I don't know, attached is the right word, but I like WandaVision. I feel more like I'm itching for that next episode in this one. Whereas I don't know if I was so much in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Obviously, I still really liked Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I think this is more along the lines of WandaVision, where there seems to be more involved here than the last series we got.
So I have one episode left, and maybe actually I fell asleep. So I have like half of the very last episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier to watch. And I would love to do a happiest hour to talk about WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And you liked WandaVision more. I think I may like Falcon and the Winter Soldier more, just slightly. And again, it's because I am super involved in characters. I love Marvel for its character development, but also how the storyline and the mythology continues. And while we just saw we got to know Wanda, and we got to know her pain and her suffering and everything that she went through and how she coped with Infinity War and Endgame. We didn't really we got to see some of her backstory, but not really. We didn't get to see her completely progress as far as the mythology goes with that character, which is fine because I think we'll probably see her in Doctor Strange 2, the newest Doctor Strange movie. She's going to have a larger component, and that will carry on her mythology post Endgame and post WandaVision more. But how they carried on the Captain America program and that part of the mythology to take it into the fourth phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I am loving every second of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Absolutely freaking loving it. And on top of that, there's some real social commentary in there too, which is, it's crazy. And I think if it hadn't been for the events of the last year, let alone the last 4 years, my senses wouldn't be so heightened to how just militarization and programming of individuals can happen, even without something fantastical like super soldier serum and all of that. So we'll get this on the books because I have a lot. I know we've wanted to do talks about both of these shows. So I think it's better to go ahead and get those two out of the way before we get into Loki, because already just seeing the pictures and kind of thinking about what I would want out of this Loki series, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have plenty of thoughts on it right off the bat. And like the second after Teets watched the first episode, he texted me, he's like, yeah, you're really going to like this. So I'm hoping it's everything that I wanted. So I don't think he would say that unless, it was true. So I'm the next, 6 or 8 episodes? Is it 8?
I think so.
So it's going to be a tough wait, but I'm better when I'm patient to watch them all in one sitting than just trying to watch one and then just be unbearable until the next week and reading everything I can on Reddit and everything like I did with Game of Thrones. So it's just better if I just leave them all up and watch them all at the same time. So anything else, Marvel, that you've got in your mind before we dive into this movie?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, let's get started with the background on the 15th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is Avengers: Age of Ultron. It came out in May 1st of 2015. It comes in at a cool 141, so just misses that 2-hour mark for me. And it made $1.4 billion, that's billion with a B as in boy, dollars at the box office. What else you got for me?
I just wanted to mention too, was this their first $1 billion earner in terms of release?
It was. It absolutely was. And so this one is going to be a little bit different. I think we're just going to steamroll. I'm going to have Teets just steamroll through kind of the breakdown of what happened in the movie, because it's not so much what happened in the movie per se that's important, but it's who we meet and how things get settled. And then I want to talk about why it's most important. And then I have some fun facts about the movie, its place in the realm, and characters who were originally written to appear in this movie for the first time. Does that sound cool to you, Teets?
Yeah.
All right. So yes, this was the first $1 billion Marvel movie. It is the second Avengers sequel, right? because the first one was just Avengers.
Yep.
And it was originally done. They had this in mind, and Kevin Feige was adamant. He wanted to close out phase 2 with the sequel to the Avengers. And that was kind of his thinking in all the phases, is that you close it out with them all together. Each phase starts, you build in, you add in more, you advance the story, and then you close it out with them all together. And so that's how we get this movie. It was directed by Joss Whedon, which people have varying thoughts on his time in the MCU world. And this movie was critically panned, like 66 on Rotten Tomatoes, basically 3 stars from all of the critics that mattered, that it was a lot of characters, but it wasn't as exciting. The villain was terrible, and the story didn't make much sense. And we understand why. So for the story, I will let Teets take it away.
Before I start, I did want to mention, too, that Danny Elfman did the score for this, which I didn't know until I did some more research on this, which is really cool because Disney fans will know him from Nightmare Before Christmas. So I didn't realize that he was involved in this film. But, so this film is a little bit on the longer side. We're at 2 hours and 23 minutes. But we start out with going back to that Hydra facility that we have seen previously with Baron von Strucker, and the Avengers are out to basically attack and, capture Strucker and stop Hydra advancement. So they raid the facility in Eastern Europe, and we then get our first real glimpse at the twins that we met previously in the end credits scene. And these twins are Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, Sokovian twins that they were one of the only ones to survive the explosion in Sokovia, or the exposure to what the Hydra has in the scepter, which will be a big component of this whole film. And so the twins have some powers. Pietro is really fast, can run really fast, and then Wanda has some mind tricks that she can do. So the Avengers get in, break into the facility. Typical Marvel style battle scene going on. Stark finds that Hydra has one of those giant alien robot whale looking things that we saw in the first Avengers, and then he sees the scepter. Wanda is there to kind of confront Stark, but kind of lets him off the hook and lets him take the scepter because she sort of has some other plans for this down the road. So she kind of let him take it easily.
Well, also, we saw this in WandaVision, but I think it's really the first time that we're seeing Wanda's capabilities, and that she's able to kind of infiltrate people's minds. She can place thoughts, images, visions, nightmares, you name it, inside of people's minds. And that's her most important trait. And that's kind of what she does to Tony, and which is his nightmare. He sees all of the Avengers dying. And then so when she sees how she reacts, or sees how he reacts to that, and that's what he sees, she's like, okay, go ahead and take it.
Yeah. So then, of course, the Avengers win this little battle. The twins escape. They don't get captured, but the Avengers take in Strucker, and he goes off to jail. Then Stark, they get back to the Avengers base, and Stark and Banner decide we're going to start studying the scepter and what its capabilities are. And
can I just say something real quick? We see a lot of people that are bad get dragged off to jail, but nothing truly happens to them. Yeah. Like, this shield jail is bullshit. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
Okay. All right, good. Validation to me. That's okay.
So Stark and Banner apparently have been working on something regarding some artificial intelligence and what they call their Ultron program. So Stark has this idea that he wants to basically relieve the Avengers of their duties, and this Ultron program would help keep everything safe, and they wouldn't need the Avengers anymore. So of course, the Stark's first grand plan is to take the energy from the scepter and use it to create a artificial intelligence within the Ultron program. And so Banner and Stark start working on that, and they don't tell the rest of the Avengers because they know, of course, the rest of the Avengers are going to be like, no, let's not do that. And they start integrating the AI and they use Jarvis to help do that. And so Stark is working on this, and he leaves, and the Avengers have this big like celebration party thing that they have to attend to, and the integration ends up being completed while they're gone, and Jarvis kind of greets Ultron as Ultron comes alive and is figuring out what the heck is going on. And so then this is where at the party, then we see them, they're all conversing and whatnot, having fun. And this is where Banner and Natasha sort of start to do their flirty thing and become
I wasn't
thing.
sure. I wasn't sure if you knew what flirting was.
So yeah, we'll see more of that later, of course, because that's kind of the romance throughout this movie. But then we get our Stan Lee cameo here. We see Stan at the party, and he is like a war veteran. And Thor is drinking some Asgardian alcohol that apparently only gods can have. And Stan's like, hold up, I survived a war. I can take that. Well, Stan couldn't take it. He had to be carried out. So then at the end of this little party, the Avengers are still sitting there, and of course Thor's hammer's on the table, so they're all, had some alcohol and decide we're going to take turns trying to lift the hammer. Well, of course, none of them can do it. However, when Captain America tries to pull the hammer, there's a little flinch in the hammer, and Thor is a little worried that maybe something is happening there. But we'll see more of that down the road.
Because what? And it was very clear in the very first Thor movie. What do you have to do or be to be able to move anything made of that? What is it? It's Asgardian steel, but
yeah,
anything made from that. What?
It's like you have to be worthy. You have to be worthy. You have to be good of. I don't know. Like
you have to be true and worthy of its ability. Let me tell you what, Tony Stark ain't worth Asgardian steel. And especially not
Tony
from this movie. Like, if I hated Tony Stark going forward, I hate Tony Stark with flames from the side of my face, starting at this movie until Endgame. And he gets everything he deserves in Endgame because of this movie and then on. But I'll say that until the second half. Keep going.
Oh, boy. Anyways, so then they're all sitting there enjoying themselves, and this piece of junk metal like appears up the stairs and in the room, and it basically introduces himself as Ultron and is what Tony had created. Tony, of course, didn't realize at this point that this would happen, but Ultron has now figured out that the Avengers are the ones that are the problem, not the rest of the world. So Ultron is now attacking the Avengers and takes Tony's suits in his down in his lab or whatever you want to call it, and all these things, and they attack so Ultron attacks the Avengers. So we have another little battle scene, and his end goal then becomes to execute the Avengers. The team, of course, starts to divide over what's happened now. Captain America's like, well, what the heck did you do? Why did you do that? And then we get they escape the attack. Ultron flies off and goes elsewhere. And then we see them in Sokovia at a church, and Ultron meets with the the twins. Get a sneeze. But so Wanda explains, but what I mentioned earlier, how Stark, she kind of let Stark have the scepter because she saw what would happen in the end, and that then Ultron explains that he wants to take out the Avengers, and then we see the Avengers are alerted that Strucker has been killed in prison by Ultron. They get notice of that, and
Finally, something happens in prison.
Ultron then heads to South Africa to meet with arms dealer Ulysses Clow, who he's got a stash of vibranium, which will come up again later. And Ultron, of course, wants the vibranium to help his grand plan of killing the Avengers, but maybe a bit more than that.
Well, and don't forget the Maximoff twins. They're totally on board with killing Tony Stark.
Yep.
And that is because, just like everything else Stark Industry does, is they like to kill people, especially parents. So the Maximoff twins' parents were killed by a bomb from Stark Industries.
Yep. So, of course, as Ultron is buying and taking the vibranium, the Avengers show up, and we have another battle scene. The twins
Their
are, of
timing
course,
is just impeccable, isn't it? Like, it's like someone is telling them when all this stuff is going down, and they just happen to be there.
And, of course, then Ultron has some backup at that point outside the twins. They all have a little battle scene. Stark tries to take on Ultron while the rest of them take on the twins and the other robot things that Ultron has. Wanda, in all this, gets close to Thor, Captain America, and Black Widow and hypnotizes them and gives them the flashbacks and the basically nightmares or whatever that you want to call them that will kind of haunt them down the road.
Yeah.
And before she can get to Hawkeye, he plants like an electrocuting arrow on her forehead that stops her from hallucinating Hawkeye, because Hawkeye's like, I've been there, done that, don't want to do that again. And Hulk is also kind of initiated by Wanda and becomes angry and goes out into Sokovia and starts breaking things and being angry Hulk like he can be. Stark
He hulks
sees
out.
what's happening. Yeah. Stark sees what's happening and calls in what he calls Veronica, which is essentially a giant Stark Hulk suit to sort of take care of Hulk and make sure he doesn't cause any more damage. So they basically calm Hulk down, knock him out, and of course now the Avengers are kind of seen as sort of bad guys, but they're not being treated well by the press and the public perception. So after this battle, they have to kind of lay low and go into hiding. So where do they go? They go to Hawkeye's house. Clint and his family kind of have like a secret base where they can hide out and stay away from the public life. We learn that Clint has 2 kids and a third on the way. And then this was where we kind of flash over to what Ultron's doing again. He meets with Dr. Helen Cho, who is capable of recreating flesh, essentially, and he wants to take on new form and become basically human using the power of the scepter and all that. Natasha and Bruce have another moment in Hawkeye's house. Bruce is like, I can't be with you though because I'm Hulk and I'm gonna hurt you or whatever. And Natasha's like, we'll be fine, but whatever. Steve Rogers, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark are out chopping some wood, and of course continue their argument like always because they don't see eye to eye ever. And Clint's wife Laura comes over and is like, "Hey, can you, Tony, go fix our tractor? It doesn't start." Clint said you wouldn't mind. Well, so he goes over to the barn and checks out the tractor, and who do we see? Our good old friend Nick Fury. So Nick, of course, confronts Tony like, what the hell did you think would happen? And then Thor left, and Thor had to go find Dr. Selvig, who we know from the Thor films. This point, we learned too
under the guise of Jane. Also, he wants to know what's up with Jane.
Yeah. We see Ultron again. We hear about what Ultron's doing. He's apparently he wants to get the missile codes, which are always regenerating, so he's having some trouble with that. We jump back to Thor. Thor and Selvig head to what is called the Water of Sights, and because Thor is all curious about these hallucinations he saw, so he needs to find out more about all that stuff. Wanda, then, as Ultron is recreating his flesh body thing, is kind of figuring out what Ultron's actual plan is. It's not just killing the Avengers. Ultron basically wants to kill every human on the planet. And Wanda then is like, I don't like this plan anymore. So she kind of intervenes, and then Ultron and the Avengers show up, of course, because the Avengers always show up at these points. And Ultron freaks out. He kills some people in the lab, hurts Dr. Cho, and takes off with the body in the chamber. And then we see Cap and Natasha go off and try to stop them. They're in a semi truck. There's a battle scene there again. The semi goes airborne by the two Ultron robot things, and Natasha gets in the back of the truck. They get the body into the Quinjet with Clint, and Natasha kind of is taken by Ultron at that point because she didn't get into the ship. So we see she's locked up by Ultron. Stark and Banner take the suit or take the body and are, of course, like, well, we got to finish this. We're going to make this body turn to our side now. And Captain America comes in and is like, let's hold up a minute. Let's not do that. He also has Wanda and Pietro with him. Pietro runs around, unplugs everything to try to stop everything.
Because Pietro is super fast.
And of course, I did, yeah, earlier. But yeah, so he runs around, unplugs everything, and then of course they're all arguing again because that's what they do. They all like to argue with each other. Then of course, but then
that's a
the body though awakens, and we see what will become Vision, who is voiced by Jarvis, but isn't Jarvis. He's a bit more than Jarvis, and
he's now a real boy.
What was in the scepter, I forgot to mention this earlier, but we learned what was in the scepter was not just some all-powering power source. It was the Mind Stone. And this is now the fourth stone that we have seen in the films that we have watched so far. And we obviously are seeing that these stones all have a very big importance in all this. And the Mind Stone is placed right on Vision's forehead. And that kind of is what's keeping Vision alive, essentially. And so Cap, of course, is very skeptical about Vision and if he'll be a good guy or a bad guy. And we then see, because Thor is back now, and we see Vision's just picks up Thor's hammer casually and tosses it to Thor. So we now know that Vision can also lift the hammer. And then they're off to Sokovia to try to stop Ultron again, because we learn that Ultron is creating some sort of Earth-ending power with the vibranium in Sokovia. So we head back there. The Avengers.
Let's just backtrack 1 second to the Mind Stone, because this becomes really important, because I think it's the first time, like, we've seen inklings of it. You watch it, and obviously if you've seen Infinity War and Endgame, you know exactly what this means. But Thor, and all of his super hotness and also love for research of mystical things, wanted to find out what he saw in his hallucination, and it basically was so much information about these stones. So now we learn what the stones are, that they are the Infinity Stones. There's 6 of them. They're the most powerful objects in existence, just independently than what happens when you put them all together. And so this is why Ultron wants to get this. But, you know, nerdy Thor came in with all the deets on the stones, the Infinity Stones, especially the Mind Stone. So props to Thor for that one. This is why sometimes you don't trust the smart guys like Banner and Stark. You just go with the hot ones, because they'll come in when you need something. They'll figure it out for you. But okay, where were you?
Well, so the Avengers are evacuating.
Well,
they're evacuating Sokovia, and Banner goes in and rescues Natasha. And Banner's like, "No, we're done now. We're gonna go off and stay away. We're not part of this battle." Of course, that doesn't last long though, because they do join in soon after.
Boy, if there's one thing, the Avengers either fight a shit ton or have massive ass FOMO. It's either one or the other. You're either fighting or are just afraid they're missing out on some bullshit. But there's no in between with these Avengers. Do you think that's fair?
That is also fair, yes.
Okay.
So Stark meets with Ultron back at the church that we've seen previously. Ultron releases his army of Ultron robots, and he shows that Stark that he's got this vibranium thing that he can unleash, and he can kill everyone essentially with. So then we go back, and Natasha kisses Banner, pushes him over a cliff, and says, "I need you as Hulk right now." So, of course, Hulk is back, and then they join in the battle. Stark is trying to figure out a solution now as the city begins to essentially rise from Earth and become floating from what Ultron is doing. They decide that, or they figure out that either they have to get everybody off, or they just take their lumps and kill the island before it plummets back down to the ground and kills everybody. But then, lo and behold, our good old friend Nick Fury shows back up, and he's got a helicarrier, because apparently there's still one of those around, even though we thought they were gone. And they take aircraft from the helicarrier to get everybody off the island before everyone, of course, dies. War Machine shows up. He joins the fight because we can't never have War Machine involved. And so then they draw in Ultron's forces to try, so then you have your typical Avengers. Everybody is assembled type battle. They all fight off the robots. And then there's one kid left on the floating island, and Clint goes out to save him.
Which is this is like the typical, if anyone is like me and watches Grey's Anatomy, it's always a kid is at the back of the bus under a seat. The bus is flipped over and on fire. So it's the worst. Either there are 3 outcomes total. You both die. You get in, can't get the kid dies. You get the kid out, and then the bus explodes and you die. But this is a scenario. He's Clint is facing a ginormous Grey's Anatomy scenario. And what do we see from Clint that we start to learn is he is absolutely selfless. Even though he has a wife and kids and a baby on the way, none of this matters when doing the right thing is the thing to do. And we learn more about that late down the line and all that. But that's Clint is like, he's not T'Challa, but he is one of those Marvel characters, like Teets can tell you, I hold super close to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
The Barton Hawkeye character is fascinating to me. But okay, go on. Does he get the kid?
Well, so Clint's off getting the kid, and Pietro sees them and that they need some help or whatever. So he runs over, tries to help them, but Ultron in the Quinjet is shooting at them. Pietro covers them up, but in turn gets shot and is killed. So of course now Wanda, being Wanda and all her sensitivities and mind reading and stuff,
she acts really, really well too.
She senses that
trauma.
Pietro has been killed, and that of course devastates her because that's her only family left after her parents were killed. So now she has nothing.
Her parents were killed by Tony Stark, and now her brother was killed by Tony Stark creation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are catching what I'm throwing out. Tell me in the chat because we're about to get to it because we're almost to the end of this movie.
Yeah. So then the city starts to plunge, and Stark is trying to figure out a way to stop it. They end up blowing up the planet, city thing, island. I don't know. Whatever.
It was really high pitched just there. Really high pitched. You're really excited about them blowing up something.
Because they got it. Well, they got everybody's safety. They, blew up the thing so it didn't kill everybody. Hulk is in an aircraft at this point and flies off in stealth mode. We don't know where Hulk goes. He doesn't respond to Natasha's plea for him to basically have help, and so they know where he is and all that stuff.
Yeah, he just takes off in a Quinjet and pieces out. And I have some interesting comic book drama about that to talk about when we're done too. So
Vision goes off and confronts and destroys Ultron with his powers. And then we end with the new Avengers facility in upstate New York. We see Stark. He's got his self-driving Audi. He's talking to Steve, and they kind of part ways. They go off in their own directions. Natasha is at the facility. She's obviously concerned about what's happened to Hulk and Bruce. Thor goes off. He wants to figure out what the heck's going on with all these stones appearing, because he knows it's not just coincidence. Something's happening here. Why are these stones all of a sudden, coming up everywhere?
But his big point was he wanted to make sure, like, the one stone that he knows about for sure is with Vision, and he feels that one is safe. But at this count, Thor has now had hands-on interaction with at least 3 stones that we know of. Yep. One that is on Asgard, and one that he went and traded directly to the Collector for safekeeping.
And then we kind of the movie wraps up with a Avengers Assemble type moment where we get Captain comes in, and then we have Natasha. Falcon flies in on his wings. We have Wanda, and they're all kind of gearing up to train for the future. And that's the end. And then we get our end. Well, then we get our end credit scene, and we see our good buddy Thanos again, who we've seen in some previous end credits and movies now. And he's got this, what looks like a glove with 6 empty spots on it.
Some might call it a gauntlet.
And he says that that's enough. He's going to take care of this himself now.
I think his exact words are, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
Yeah. So, and that's where we end.
Okay, so I've hyped this up as the most important movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And y'all, do you agree, disagree?
It's I don't know. I don't know if I want to. It's definitely up there. It's definitely up there. I just don't know if it is the most important just yet. It definitely has a lot of pieces that we're pulling everything together now. We're ending phase 2 here. We're going to go into phase 3. We have some new characters. We are getting more Infinity Stone details and what that entails. We get a little glimpse more about what Thanos might be doing. So there's a lot of pieces here that connect some dots and open some more loose ends that we'll learn about later.
Was this your first viewing of the movie, or did you go see this one in the theaters too?
No, I definitely saw this in the theater because I remember seeing the end credits and being like, well, now what?
Yeah. So, and that's why I tell everyone. So Mr. Worldwide actually saw it in the theater too, and he's like, I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, well, one, you only had seen Iron Man, the first one, and Avengers. Of course, you're not going to know what's going on. He thought he would know because, he'd seen the first Avengers, and this was the first sequel. But this movie is what defines the beauty of watching all of the movies this way, because this movie at this point in time, when you see Thanos and it goes dark and you get the black card for whatever the next movie that's coming out is, it all makes sense now. They have figured out what these stones mean. That Thor is going to go figure out what's in the Tesseract, what's in all this other stuff, and go into space magic world to figure out what they need to do. The other thing you see is that the truest members of the Avengers aren't the ones that created their personas. So that's not Stark. Stark is Iron Man because he created Iron Man. And Banner is Banner. He's not on the same level as what we come to know and come to find out is the true Avengers, which is the ones that are led by Captain America. They are victims of circumstance, of lineage, of someone else trying to do something, but the line is clearly drawn. You're starting to see it being drawn between the two factions of the Avengers, and it obviously all comes to head in like 2 movies in Civil War when it just absolutely completely breaks apart. But you start to see that on the scientists' side, they're just going to do whatever because they think it's going to be easier for the rest of the group, not knowing that the rest of the group their entire life is built around just doing these things, saving the universe, fighting otherworldly beings. That's what they're here to do. And just the breakdown between those two, it's so intriguing. Absolutely intriguing. I mean, I'm team Captain America anyway, but what are your thoughts? Because you are a huge, huge Iron Man fan. You love Iron Man. You said going into this, he was your favorite Avenger. And now, 15 movies in and watching him this way, how do you feel about Iron Man?
He's still my favorite. I mean, I obviously know what's coming and what's happened because I've seen them, but I know I get where you're coming from, and I know why a lot of people side with Cap. I have no issues with Cap. I don't know. I don't know, something. I've always just liked Tony Stark more than the rest of them, and Hulk too. Bruce. I've always really liked Bruce Banner too. So
that's I thought you might have a little bit of a change of heart, but then again, you are like a stick to it guy. So you're ride or die, which is gonna be interesting because okay, we've gone way past spoiler. If you don't know that Tony Stark dies doing the first actual heroic thing Tony Stark has ever done, the first selfless thing he's ever done, which all of the Captain America side of the Avengers constantly do selfless acts. So it's really crazy that the first time Tony does a selfless act, he dies.
Which
Anyway,
I think it kind of is.
I know it ties it up in a neat bow. It's it's poetic that he finally does it and he dies, but that he knows he has to do it, and he constantly needs Doctor Strange to be like, he's like, F it, fine. Though I think at some point he still thought he would probably live through it, because hubris is like that. What were things you were surprised by that this movie, watching it now in this kind of viewing versus just seeing everything out of order?
I guess I kind of forgot, because it's been a while since I watched this film too. I think I kind of forgot that Thor was kind of the one that started putting pieces together in terms of the stones. So I think that was interesting, and obviously knowing, like he's mentioned, that we now have seen 4 stones in the films, and they're it's appearing more and more and stuff like that. I definitely vividly remember the end credit scene in the theaters and just being like, what the heck, and what's next? Which I think really that might have been the moment where it really kind of drew me into the Marvel movies, and I really kind of got hooked in, and then after that I was like, every opening night I was seeing these movies in the theaters and stuff like that.
Yeah, so this also, as the realm goes, the first one, with the exception of Captain Marvel, that was filmed way later, but it fits in at the beginning. It did truly skip around quite a bit, because in phase 1, how the movies were released were Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, then Captain America, the First Avenger, and then the Avengers. And we know that that's not necessarily how this all plays out. We get Captain America, the First Avenger, and then Captain Marvel, and then the Iron Mans, and then Thor, Incredible Hulk, First Avengers, right? And then 2 starts off with, they jump around a little bit more in Iron Man 3, Dark World, Winter Soldier, Guardians, Age of Ultron, and then they're also saying Ant-Man kind of falls into that's what we're going to watch next week is Ant-Man, which also came out the same year as Age of Ultron. But once we get into phase 3, which starts with Civil War, how they were released is directly how the movie should be watched. So, establishing the backstories of all the pertinent characters, they released them out of order. I think Age of Ultron, if they done it this way that we're watching him, would have made perfect sense, like I said, as the keystone. So we still know that there may be more personas out there, because Nick always drops a little hint at something, that there's other people. We see him around full time when there's nothing else he's trying to track down or identify or get an understanding of. And in these movies, when he flies in and out, it just gives us right away that kind of understanding that there's still more help for the Avengers that's out there. And obviously, we're going to see it in phase 3, because like I said, we still have Ant-Man, and we've got 3 more. Yeah, we haven't met a really important part of phase 3 yet. We haven't met Peter Parker.
Oh yeah,
because all those original movies came out of the MCU, like were filmed out of the MCU. So we haven't even met Peter Parker yet. Sweet little Peter Parker. Iron Man ruined him. But any other thoughts? Because then I want to get into a little bit of background on some of the things that we saw a little bit in comic book history on that kind of stuff, and just one thing that I don't think people knew. But any other thoughts on Age of Ultron?
No, I don't think so. I definitely don't think it's one of the worst Marvel movies by any means. So I don't really know why some may think that. We talked a bit about critics' reviews and Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, but I think it's a pretty good, and it's a pretty, like you said, we've mentioned, it's a pretty important movie overall to the grand scheme of things.
So, I will admit I've only seen it in the context of a chronological rewatch, so I can't speak to that. But like Alan Sepinwall and Pete Travers and people that do tend to love these Marvel movies were harsh on it for some of those reasons I mentioned. They loved the characters, and they felt that it wasn't true to what most of these Marvel and Avengers movies had been, because the storyline didn't seem what it should be. Like, the villain wasn't ultimately Ultron, and we all know the villain is not ultimately Ultron. The villain we see after the credits.
Yeah.
And it's, when you think about that, Joss Whedon, who directed it, actually said that he had a complete outline for the film, and that he also drew inspiration for how to structure this from The Empire Strikes Back and The Godfather Part 2 as inspirations. So I don't know a whole lot about Empire Strikes Back in that first cycle of Star Wars movies, but do you get a lot of that kind of like plot progression similar to this? Because I can tell you absolutely on The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, because that's the second movie in the first Star Wars trilogy. So it's kind of, you got your, obviously, New Hope was your setup. You're meeting your characters. This is now you're progressing. You kind of see where the villain aspect's going. You get more. You have some things, and then the third just kind of your wrap up, and your good guys prevail type thing.
Yeah. So Whedon wrote this and directed it. At the same time, he was also working on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. So I think that's why you see a lot of those characters kind of play back and forth. And as for, like I said, Godfather, everyone knows that. But the best movie is Godfather Part 2, because that is when all of it makes sense, and I'm going to keep using it in game, is put out there, and what they're ultimately trying to achieve after you've already developed all the characters in their roles and how everything is working in the first Godfather. So, if you had to guess a character that was originally written to appear in Age of Ultron that has not previously appeared or been mentioned in any Marvel movie up to this point, who would you guess it would be?
Well, my first inkling would be Black Panther because of the vibranium connection. I don't.
That's incorrect. So keep going.
No. Trying to. I don't know. So someone we haven't seen yet. I mean, are we going? Because obviously, are you going based on what we have watched, or how this was released?
Both.
Okay, because maybe Captain Marvel.
It was Captain Marvel. And so the original script, she appeared in an early draft of the screenplay, and she was removed since the character they hadn't cast her. And two, ultimately it was Kevin Feige's decision, because her existence had never been mentioned or related to any prior character or any prior movie. And because her backstory was so compelling, he didn't want to introduce her because the plan was for her to just fly in and show up. It's like, hey, I'm here. I'm Captain Marvel. I do these things. He thought her backstory was so important that we needed to know her backstory before she first appears in the universe and with all of the Avengers. So they did shoot a lot of the visual effects thinking that she was going to be, in the movie, but those ended up going to Wanda. So you know why? She now descends in like this kind of red thing, and
Yeah.
now Carol flies in looking as like a bright yellow orange thing. Well, Captain Marvel was originally with the effects supposed to just drop down in the sky, kind of like Wanda does. There's your fun fact. Did you enjoy that?
Yes, that was good. I didn't know that.
So they're also in the comic book mythology of Hulk. So obviously, there are multiple storylines by multiple different authors and illustrators for all these characters. While the general genesis of the character stays true, they try and take them into different situations, events, what they're trying to do. And what the movies do is kind of what they try to do is take the most linear aspect where they're all in line and then bring in a bunch of different storylines and plot points from different illustrators to make just one thematic plot line. And so they weren't sure what was going to happen with Hulk. This goes back to Whedon drawing a lot of different things for this one. He wasn't exactly sure what they were going to do with Hulk going forward, because at that point in time, there were two major plot lines for Hulk. It was where he keeps going, or then there was a new line of comic books called Planet Hulk, where he actually leaves the Earth and goes out into space and becomes a citizen of space. Now, they decided just to put him on the Quinjet and have him leave, and we have Natasha who's like, yeah, I hope he's still alive, but he's gone somewhere because the Quinjet just can't be tracked anymore. I can't contact him, all of that. So we will, in a later installment of a movie, see what they ultimately did to kind of revamp that Planet Hulk storyline and make what Bruce has been doing out in his kind of banishment time. And we'll see that in Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
But Hulk does leave Earth. Anything else? I think that was like only all the fun tips I had to drop. The Captain Marvel thing was really interesting to me when I started researching all of that. I'm like, good, because it would be really, really hard to describe her just dropping in from nowhere.
I could see her doing that in this movie. It just would be strange to have it.
Like she would have to show up with Nick Fury, and it would be just a shit ton of Nick and S.H.I.E.L.D. explaining who she is. Yeah. And I think it's better for us to get introduced to her the way we get introduced to her. And also, it gives a really great backstory to what Phase 4 is going to be, involving the Kree and the Skrulls and the Celestials and Eternals and the Deviants and all of this. She is a great entryway to that. And to have it, you finally meet her and get all the information about her right before the end of Phase 3 with Endgame, I think was perfect. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
Because, she also, and that's what this one also opens a lot of doors to, if MCU ever wants to write the X-Men into Phase 4 or Phase 5. That was the beauty of this script, and what it did is to leave those doors open that they can ultimately join or come in and be part of it all.
Yeah, I don't know if they're planned for 4. We really don't have an end to 4 yet, but I do. There's been a lot of talk about the X-Men coming in. So
because technically, Pietro / Quicksilver was an X-Man.
Yep.
But anyway, this was fun. I am so glad we are into the best part of the Marvel movies. Heck, even Ant-Man is fun. I don't have anything bad to say about Ant-Man, so I'm really excited to rewatch it and talk about it next week. And then I feel like we almost need either a special guest or 2 hours to talk about Civil War, because that's when the ball starts rolling down the hill officially. So we're 2 weeks away from Civil War, and it is just fast and furious of all of the best movies once we hit that Civil War, which, you know what? It's perfect because it'll be right at the beginning of July. And the Crescent Lake Club, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and the bell notification, because in July we are doing Christmas in July with a whole bunch of giveaways here on YouTube and on our social media. We'll probably start laying out the rules of that the last week of July and just give you guys kind of an idea of what we're going to be giving away each week. We've got all sorts of fun stuff from the parks, pops. Oh my gosh, if you're a Disney fan, I've got H2O Bath Essentials gift sets that I know some of y'all want because you can't steal those little bottles anymore now that they put the big bottles in your bathrooms. We've got all sorts of stuff. We're also going to have some new features popping up as we try and grow our content here on YouTube. You're going to be seeing from me a little bit more. I know you guys just can't get enough of me. But even better, you're going to get more news straight from Teets. And so I'm excited about that. And stay on the lookout because we'll have a revamped live Sunday show coming to you guys within the next couple of weeks. So a lot of things, a lot of summer fun going on here with the Crescent Lake Club. Teets is in Hilton Head next week, and then he's in Florida over July 4th. Courtney and I will be in Florida twice in July at the end of the month, doing a whole bunch of crazy different things. We're hoping for fireworks, a lot of live streaming, resort tours, whatever you guys are looking for. We're ready to do that. And then the whole Crescent Lake Club gang. I don't know if we've made the big grand announcement about it, but we will all be on site live for the 50th anniversary, the opening day 50th anniversary celebration of Walt Disney World and the opening weekend of Ratatouille. So, or Remy's Rat Adventure, or whatever we're calling it these days. Is that what it is? Remy's Rat Adventure?
Remy's Ratatouille Adventure.
But I thought he goes through the restaurant. He's not making Ratatouille. He's just trying to get out the restaurant, right?
I just what the name they gave it. So.
All right. I feel like I'm about to be real disappointed by that one, but who knows? If you guys follow Disney, Courtney and I will be back on Wednesday for a little bit of wine on Wednesday. We've got a lot of news. Maybe we'll have a Teets join us. Who knows? He sure did like being around in person instead of having to correct us in the chat last week. So we'll see how things shake out. But any last Marvel thoughts? Teets?
I did want to mention that they just announced that Loki, the premiere episode, was the biggest premiere on Disney Plus that they have had to date. So
I believe it. And like I said, I'm all about characters. And we know Loki is not bad. He just does shit to make his dad love him. That's all he wants is just paternal acceptance. He's not nefarious. He loves Thor. He doesn't ultimately want to hurt Thor, but he will hurt Thor if it means his dad will love him. Listen, there's a lot of daddy issues. We go through this every week. Also, I kind of appreciated Age of Ultron because there was not a daddy issue or a problematic woman.
Very true. Laura, Clint's wife, was not problematic.
She was not problematic at all. She was a breath of fresh air. And this, it's like, of all people, Barton picked like a normal one. Anyway, well, so thank you guys again for joining us. We'll be back next Monday with Ant-Man, and Courtney and I'll be here on Wednesday for Wind Down Wednesday talking more travel. So from Teets, from me, I'm Keels, and the rest of the Crescent Lake Club, we will see you real